Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name's Frederick Wheeler, and today I want to discuss the phrase all for one and one for all from the story The Three Musketeers and how it relates to Dungeons and Dragons. So you might not know, but I am a collector of movies and a big fan of movies, full stop. In fact, I'm so much of a fan that I actually have 5 different copies of The Three Musketeers. I have The Three Musketeers with Orlando Bloom. I have The Musketeer with Justin Chambers. I have a very old movie, The Three Musketeers with Keith Sutherland and Charlie Sheen, Chris O'Donnell. An even older movie with Richard Chamberlain, Michael York and Oliver Reed, The Three Musketeers. And then there's Natasha in La Femme Musketeer. So I don't know of a single Dungeons and Dragons player that I've ever met who doesn't love this story. For me, I love it. It's a great story. And the reason I love it is because of the relationship between the characters, the main characters, the key characters. This is a story about the formation and relationship between a group or team of heroes and friends fighting for the greater good. Sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons group to me. In fact, the dynamic between the characters in the Three Musketeers, for me, is much more like a Dungeons and Dragons group or party than a party from, say, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, or any kind of other fantasy story. So what can players and dungeon masters take from the story The Three Musketeers and their relationship and apply to their own game of Dungeons and Dragons? Well, the first thing I would say is all the characters are heavily flawed. Each of these characters are so heavily flawed, in fact, that it's surprising that they would actually get along, let alone be heroic, and yet they are able to get along, and they are in fact heroic throughout the story. We have D'Artagnan. He's left home. He's seeking to join the Musketeers. He's wanted to do this all of his life. He's extremely inexperienced. He's naive. He's stubborn. He's very arrogant. And he finds that he's refused access to the Musketeers because he's lost his letter of recommendation. Then we have Athos. Athos has been heavily scarred by his relationship with Milady de Winter. And as a result, he's turned to drinking. He's quite a moody character. He's very, very serious, probably the most serious character of them all. He's given up all his wealth and he's turned to service with the king. Aramis is in training to be a priest, but he hasn't joined the clergy. And this is probably a product of him being disheartened with its leadership, the cardinal. He is also quite a handsome man and a womanizer. Not only a womanizer, but a schemer, and quite sarcastic. Porthos is a carefree, joking dandy whose interest in fashion and wealth is quite clear. He's more concerned about what royalty and nobility think of him, and yet he's in the service of the king. And that's probably primarily because of his focus and his character and his flaws than anything else. Party conflict doesn't have to be a bad thing, and actually in some cases it can be a necessary factor as long as everything comes back together again. In this particular story, The Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan actually start their relationship in conflict. D'Artagnan actually offends the Three Musketeers, Athos, Porthos and Aramis, and they challenge each other to a duel to the death. Now, this doesn't actually take place because the cardinal's guards interrupt them in the middle of their duel, and they band together, fight the cardinal guards and beat them. Now, I have no doubt that D'Artagnan would have been killed if he had fought even 1 or even 2 or 3 of those duels with the Three Musketeers. But in fact he doesn't, and once they have a chance to talk and realise that they have a common interest, that they hold the Musketeers the protection of France and the king over all else, they become best friends. And this is because they share a common goal in their life. All of the characters in the Three Musketeers have a shared goal in life, and that is protect the king and France. D'Artagnan starts by trying to assist the Queen in hiding an affair from the king with Duke Buckingham to avoid a war between France and England. He can't do this alone, so he has to ask for help, and he asks that help from the Three Musketeers, Athos, Porthos and Aramis. Now, the Three Musketeers don't serve the Queen, they serve the king and France, but they do realise and understand that if this affair comes to light, a war will break out between France and England, and it is in the best interest to protect France and the king from this. The real threat is the Cardinal, and when the Cardinal arranges to have Lord de Winter and Duke Buckingham assassinated, they intervene again, because, as I said, the real threat for these four characters is the Cardinal. So is it possible to have serious and comical characters at the same table playing at the same time? Well, I think the Three Musketeers sort of does highlight the fact that that is possible in a story and adventure. Does it take away from the dramatic effect of the story? I don't think it necessarily does. We have D'Artagnan and Athos, both extremely serious characters, while we have Aramis and Porthos, who are the lighter comical relief to a large extent in the story. That lighter comical relief allows for the drama that's caused by the Cardinal as he schemes against the Queen and the King to take some of the tension out of the story. Because if you're constantly at a high level of tension, it's quite exhausting, particularly if you're playing for 3 or 4 hours. My last point is needing each other. D'Artagnan and the Musketeers need each other to stop the schemes of the Cardinal against the King, the Queen and France. It's simply impossible for them to do anything against the Cardinal alone. The Cardinal has too many men and too much power. And the same thing applies to your own group. None of you can achieve what you need to do in the long term alone. You all need to work together, which is why the concept and the phrase all for one and one for all is so important. I wasn't going to put this in here, so why am I doing this video? So somebody asked me, would I do a video on how to deal with problem, difficult or issues with players and dungeon masters. Now the problem with me doing something like that is my players watch my YouTube videos, and if you can't see a problem in that, I certainly can. Doing a video on problem DMs, well, I'm a DM, I don't have a problem with doing that, that's fine, but I think this is probably a better way of responding to that. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please share, like and subscribe. Make a comment below and tell me what you think you can take from the story The Three Musketeers and apply to your own game table. And rather than say, till next time, keep rolling those 20s, I'm going to say, all for one and one for all.